4 years later, is this guitar now worth it? Welcome back, Troglodytes, to your daily dose guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. What model are we talking about? Well, we're taking a trip back to 2019 to the Paul reissue. I was so excited when the very last year of the Henry J era decided to finally breathe new life into the sacred The Paul series. And that's what's cool about the Henry J era. Pretty much every single cool Norland era model did see some sort of a reissue at some point in time. For example, the Les Paul 2550, they did that in the Les Paul 25 format. Les Paul Artisan, it was planned, it just got canceled, unfortunately. Ripper and grabber basses, yep, those happened. Did they bring back the RDs? Yeah, they just didn't quite get the specs right, but that's pretty much true for all these reissues. They also did the L6S. To a lesser extent, we could talk about the M3s. Now, so far, they haven't been brazen enough to reissue the Corvus, and I'm honestly surprised they didn't do the Marauder or the S1. But anyways, back to our main topic today, the 2019 The Paul. They finally did it, and they did a pretty decent job, because as I was telling you earlier, they usually put a modernized twist on these, because you gotta remember, back then, this was pre-2020 market pricing when everything is just shot up. They had to compete against the vintage originals at a premium price brand new, and it just didn't make sense for most people to buy them. Outside of the fact that usually they become, small-time collectibles, and they become scarce on the used market. So how much was the reissue brand new? They were $1,399. Now, let me tell you, that was seen as excessive back then, because originals, they were like $800 to maybe $1,200 at the max at that time. So $200 over a very clean original, yeah, it was a pretty tough sell. How did they get around that? By making them limited edition. Now, unfortunately, I don't think they ever told us how many of these they made. It wouldn't surprise me if it's in the 200 to 400 range. But what changes did they make to these? If you want to go really in depth and see everything, you can check out this episode that I made when they were launched. But here's a brief rundown of it all. The headstock was not quite as big. The logos were slightly different, where the I touches the G on the originals, but not on the new one. The volute style, that's different on all of these, but at least it has one. One of the biggest omissions was the fact that we don't have the dot inlay on the first fret on the reissues, and they gave them a rosewood fretboard instead of ebony. That kind of hurt them at first. The newer ones had a slightly rounder neck profile and the more taller modern fret wire. They were typically 2 pieces of walnut, whereas most vintage originals are 3+, but not all. The routing for the control cavity was ever so slightly different. The newer ones had a PCB versus hand-wired pots, 490R, 498T pickups instead of original T-tops, more modern strap buttons, with a different toggle switch style, L-shaped on the originals, regular Les Paul on these. Poker chip was not installed at the factory on the reissues. They had the more modern Allen key bridges, and the contours were a little bit more exaggerated on your belly and forearm cuts. So no, not a one-for-one recreation, but it was so much better than the late 90s The Paul 2 that was seen as an evolution upon this lineup. Whereas this one's not necessarily a replica, but at least they were trying to go for most of the specs. So both good in their own unique ways. But I happened to get this other one through a trade, so I wanted to redocument it mainly because this walnut body, it's not quite as wood grainy as my first one. However, it does have flame figuring within it, which you don't find in every single one of these. So obviously, even though this one does have a few nicks and dings and some wear marks when I could probably find a cleaner one, I don't think I'll find that in too many more of these. That's just kind of interesting wood grain lottery stuff here. And these things have held up incredibly well. They've actually gained value. Most of the times when you see these pop up, they're asking anywhere between $12,000 and $2,000. Now, if you adjust for inflation, probably wasn't a good investment brand new unless you got a deal. So even though at the time this thing seemed really expensive, if you compare it to what you could get nowadays for about the same money, you're looking at like a Les Paul Modern Light as like the closest thing to this. Except for this one got the full-on hard shell case. It was a limited edition release. It's a slightly thicker body with, I would say, a slightly better satin finish. It was just something that took some time for people to appreciate. But let's check out our case candy here, consisting of our old baby photo. This one originally came from Sweetwater, so it's got a little bit of extra case candy. But here's Gibson official case candy with the old style pre-pack checklist. Looks like this one had a warranty issue with a cracked bridge pickup ring, so we'll have to correct that today if it hasn't already. But we've got our Gibson strap, owner's manual, the old style big Gibson warranty card, Gibson multi-tool, the black polished cloth that you dare not use because it stains your guitar, and we've got some original receipts in here. It's funny to me how much case candy has changed in only a few short years, but let's go ahead and review this one for the interesting piece that it is by throwing it on the workbench to take a look at its individual parts and specs before we get to a playing sample. Inside our reissue, let's go ahead and take a look at these pickups. The outside, just like the originals, they're uncovered double black Gibson pickups. And it's the 490R in the neck, and the bridge position is the 498T. When these first came out, I was kind of upset that they chose these pickups because they're not very T-top-like. Because they read 13.77 k ohms in the bridge position, 7.76 in the neck, in the middle just for fun, 4.96. Whereas T-tops would be like 7.5-ish. But you gotta remember, the originals had the same pickups as you would find on a Les Paul Custom. And the base model customs do come with this. However, I think if they were to do this reissue again, we would get the calibrated T-types in here, guaranteed, and they would change this back to an ebony fretboard. The downside being, I'm sure this would be like a $2,000 guitar in today's market. Brand new. But here's what our neck pickup cavity looks like in this one, SNX. I would assume that stands for Satin Natural. And then we've got TP19 in the bridge for the Paul 2019. You can see there's a small area right there that didn't get stained, but that's a solid 2-piece walnut body. And I did have to swap out that bridge pickup ring. Can you spot the crack? It's right here. It looks like he might have glued it at one point in time. But I figure I'm in it. Might as well swap it out since Gibson did send a direct replacement. But speaking of needing to be replaced, let's take a look at the bridge and tailpiece. So it's a regular Nashville style one, but it's got this weird pitting to it. Now you could say, hey, that could be the player's sweat. However, I know how much this guy plays his guitars, and it's not that much. So it almost makes me just think this had a bad plating. Because our tailpiece is like that too, but it also could just be maybe his sweat reacted to this particular one. That really wouldn't explain the light plating wear on top of this one. But this is the modern style that you can use an Allen key to adjust your action if you wish. Then control-wise, we've got our toggle switch right down here. That switch is really stiff. I'll have to see what's going on there. But it's just regular 2 volumes, 2 tones. Output jack on the side. Despite these being a satin finish, they have more of like a semi-gloss feel to them. It's a really nice quality nitro finish. Here you can see the exaggerated arm contour across nearly the entire guitar. I mean, it starts pretty much right here and goes all the way up and just tapers off right there. And not only do you have that on the front, but you also get the belly cut back here, which is also more extreme on the reissue. As far as play wear, you've just got some picking scratches right here. Unfortunately, those are so deep that they're breaking the finish a little bit. Continuing on from our 2-piece walnut body, we've got that 3-piece walnut neck with the rosewood fretboard this time. I remember being really upset that these had rosewood boards when they came out, but now I really appreciate it because it's not a one-for-one reissue anyway. I guess another difference here is these do not have the mother of pearl inlays. We got acrylic on these. And we've got our 12-inch fretboard radius paired with a 24 3/4-inch scale. Our nut measure is 1.69 inches. That increases to 2.07 at the 12th, with a first fret neck depth of 0.86, increasing to 0.99 at the 12th. There's that neck profile at the 1st fret and the 12th fret, just a nice rounded C. And I'll never forget, it's this guitar that taught me that Gibsons have a maple cap over their truss rod route, because they don't stain it very good on this model. And since we don't have the phenolic veneer over top of the headstock like we normally do, it's just wide open for you to see. So if you know to look for it right there, you can see it even with the cover on. But that's how most Gibsons are created. So even if you have an all mahogany Les Paul, technically there is a little bit of maple in there that you just don't really see. Our truss rod's in perfect shape. And we can just quickly check out the headstock here. Some nice wood grain, although no flame figuring up here. And just some minor dings, one there, and a slightly more major one here. Then I also noticed this. Gibson did a really terrible job on this headstock. Now, is it possible that somebody dinged this against something? Yeah, looks like they just over-rounded it. Because it's like that on both sides. And the finish doesn't feel like it's been disturbed or anything. Moving on to the backside, your eyes do not deceive you, they decided to use PCB boards. I'm not sure why, it was probably just ease of convenience. The good news is any white quick connect set of pickups, you can easily swap them in and out if this isn't the set for you. And for example, if that 3-way switch was no good, I could easily replace one. I was able to make it a little bit better just by bending the prongs out a little bit, because that's what was happening. Our little black plunger thing was getting caught underneath here. That's what made it hard to get in and out of the positions. But here you can see the modern strap button style, a mix between a regular strap button and a strap lock by having that larger head. And since it's a 2-piece body, the front and back are both going to have the flame figuring when you get in the light. As far as condition back here, saw a couple of impressions/scratches on the edge right there, a few more in this area as well, and maybe an area where a strap kind of rubbed against the finish, very minor. Then we'll take a quick look around the edges. You can see just how deep that cut is. It looks like we got a small little gash on the side. This is one of those guitars, the more and more you look, the more small dings and scratches you'll find. I like the neck on this one. It's 3 pieces, but each piece has like a lot of dark and light streaks, and the darkness starts right before the other piece begins, so it gives you kind of a interesting striped candy cane-like look. Here's how they made the volutes in this era. They're definitely a little bit more pronounced, not quite as stylized, but you'll learn to appreciate them. Then we've got our Grover tuners, which most original DePauls had. And this was before they changed the serial number back to the year, year system. So we're still operating on the year production number. And we've got the 2019 model stamp. All said and done, this one weighs 7 pounds, 11.3 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how this one sounds. First impressions, this is one of those good examples that vibrates all over, and I'm really digging this neck profile. It's certainly chunkier than the original series, which in my opinion is a good thing. That bridge is very dark. Whereas that neck is a little bit more open. Then that middle. Now that we know all about the DePaul reissue a few years after its release, is it worth it? I think it depends how much you can pick one of these things up for. If it's around the initial retail price, I think it's a lot of fun. But if you were to actually pay somebody who's asking like $2,000 for one of theirs, I mean, if it's your only guitar, you're probably better off with like a 50s, 60s Les Paul Standard. But this thing does something unique. It has the vintage aesthetic, yet it has these somewhat more modern tones. So this is more so for somebody who had a Les Paul growing up, but wants a brand new experience with one. Or you just have some of the Pauls and you want something similar but different. But there's definitely a reason you don't see these things pop up too often. So it's one of those ones where you have to pay a little bit of a premium as compared to the specs that you're getting, but it's a lot of fun if you love the 70s era. So I think I'll hold on to this special example for the time being because that's just some pretty cool wood grain on this one. Alright, Troglodytes, I hope you enjoy your new guitar knowledge. Do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, consider subscribing. I post videos like this every day. And you might even enjoy this next one.